hey, we're doing this thing in Japan called K1J Max, and we need something highly entertaining, something crazy. You're 40 years old. Can you put a show on? And I said, I would do the most ridiculous shit ever. I would do flying kicks. I'll even come in costume. If they allowed me to do Jeet Kune Do, the second he threw a reverse leg round kick, I would side kick his support leg and cripple him for the rest of his life. The best fighting is very simplistic and very ugly. So I met a few of his students over the years. I went to some seminars and I'm like, this can't be no Jeet Kune Do. This doesn't make sense to me. None of these students would have become teachers if Bruce Lee lived. None of them. They have no speed, they're totally out of shape, and they don't know how to make me a world-class athlete.
Well, people, we are here with Sifu Tony Valente. Yes, I'm very honored and privileged of having Sifu Valente here to answer my questions. You will have to excuse my English. Well, Sifu Valente, thank you very much for being here. It's an honor and a privilege. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Your English is good.
Thank you. Okay, Sifu, I will start from the very end. You saw the video, your fight, in which I commented on my channel, and I presented you as a Jeet Kune Do fighter. But many people pointed out in the comments that that was not Jeet Kune Do, that was Taekwondo. Could you tell us what it was that you actually used in that fight?
In reality, the fight was a tribute to the golden era of Kung Fu movies. That's why you had all the jumping, the flying kicks, all of the spinning and all of this stuff. And then, part of the outfit was a Game of Death outfit. And then I had my hair into an afro. So that was, like the 70s. And I knew Jim Kelly for 9 years.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I actually did a TV commercial with Jim Kelly with LeBron James at 19 years old.
Wow. I don't know LeBron James, but Jim Kelly was my favorite character in Enter the Dragon. Even though I love Bruce Lee, the character of Jim Kelly, awesome.
Yeah, I knew him for 9 years.
Wow. So you must have a lot of stories with him or about him.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Throughout his life, he was very difficult to work with. So after Bruce Lee passed away, he got a 3-picture deal, and they hired a young Jackie Chan to help him, and he fired Jackie Chan.
Jim Kelly fired Jackie Chan?
He fired Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan was hired as a stuntman to help Jim Kelly.
Wow, have no idea.
Yeah. So yeah, he there was so many different versions of Jim Kelly. So, he became a pro tennis player. He tried to become a pro boxer. He trained with Rickson Gracie for 4 years to learn jiu-jitsu. He did track and field. He did really good in real estate. So there were so many different levels of his life. But as a person, he was nothing like the movie character. And we used to joke about it that I was like Williams and he was, he's just a different kind of guy. Mm-hmm. But I was very much like Williams for sure. And in real life, he's nothing like that at all.
Oh, right. Williams, yeah. Right. Because Jim Kelly played Williams. I was confusing with John Saxon. So you were like the character
like
of Jim Kelly.
Character in Enter the Dragon.
Great. Coming back to your fight, you used Kung Fu, basically.
Absolutely. Because Jeet Kune Do, in reality, is probably less than 15 moves. And Jeet Kune Do is economy of movement. So you're not going to be using a bunch of techniques. When someone throws, you're going to side kick to their leg, you're going to close the distance, and you are going to intercept.
Right.
There's no flying kicks, none of that stuff. It was for Japan television, and it was great entertainment.
And did you have a coach?
No coach. But in my corner was Dewey Cooper.
I don't know who he is.
Okay, so Dewey Cooper trains Francis Ngannou for UFC
Wow.
and boxing.
And how did that get along? Because your style is a very unorthodox kickboxing style. And how did you
Well,
get
see,
along?
I started martial arts in 1973. So I turned pro kickboxing back in the 80s.
Wow.
So I fought point tournament in the 70s. I fought kickboxing in the 80s and fought for years, and then took probably 8 or 10 years off. And then I was sitting in the audience and I was watching this guy fight, and I go, man, that guy sucks. I'll get out of bed and beat him. So the promoter goes, oh yeah, let's see if you can do it. So I did. I beat the guy. So then a couple of years later, they go, hey, we're doing this thing in Japan called K1J Max. And we need something highly entertaining, something crazy. You're 40 years old. Can you put a show on? And I said, I would do the most ridiculous shit ever. I would do flying kicks. I'll even come in costume. So initially they said, you know what, that's great. We'll give you a 3-fight deal. So for the second fight, I actually wanted to come in dressed as Pai Mei. I wanted to just be with white hair and, just like the movie character. But, it didn't materialize. Nonetheless, it's a part of history. But as far as Jeet Kune Do, absolutely not. So if they allowed me to do Jeet Kune Do, the second he threw a reverse leg round kick, I would side kick his support leg and cripple him for the rest of his life.
Right.
I would shatter his groin, and I would put him under. I wouldn't even throw a head kick.
Right.
Muay Thai
did you train Jeet Kune Do?
No, go ahead.
Did you train Jeet Kune Do? Did you learn Jeet Kune Do?
I learned I started. Okay, so here's my Jeet Kune Do journey. So I met a few of his students over the years. I went to some seminars, and I'm like, this can't be no Jeet Kune Do. This doesn't make sense to me. So first I met Dan Inosanto, and I did some training. And I was like, this is not no Jeet Kune Do. I don't know what the fuck this shit is. Because it was an economy of movement, and everything was pushing Filipino martial arts. So I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. So I'm like, I went to someone else, and I'm like, this guy doesn't know nothing. But as I met the Bruce Lee historians, I started talking to people that actually knew Bruce Lee. None of these students would have become teachers if Bruce Lee lived. None of them. So by Bruce Lee dying, they created this job, this folklore, and like even Ted Wong. As soon as Bruce Lee died, he changed the entire curriculum. So if you look at his history of training people, nobody ever came out of that school that had any skill, because he changed the formula. So for me, I'm like, you know what? The most important thing is how did Bruce Lee think? So here is the secret to everything that he did. Everything is based on the 10,000 hour rule. So in his notes, he said, I don't fear the man that knows 10,000 techniques. I fear the man that has practiced one technique 10,000 times. So it takes 10,000 hours to master a technique. So you pick 10 techniques and you spend those hours working on those techniques, and you get yourself in top physical shape. And basically that's it. So if you were to open up a martial arts school, like Bruce Lee said, without system, without method, what's to teach? Because in reality, you pick 10 techniques and you drill them for 10,000 hours. So a guy opening up a school, he can't make a living, because you walk in and he's like, hey, do that punch 20 million times, and in 10,000 hours, I'll show you the next punch. No one's going to stay. So a lot of these students, they created different agendas so they could stay in business and, make a living off of it. But right before he died, he closed all his schools And he said, I don't like where this is going. Close the schools immediately. That's it. You're done. So the schools were basically so he could pay his bills until he made it into the film industry. Because even in his interview with Alex Ben Block, they go, how are your students? There's a long pause, and then he goes, they're okay. Because he never intended on making people like him. It was just, he paid Dan Inosanto $20 a week to train those people. He really didn't want nothing to do with them. So the real people would be at his house training. So Joe Louis, Mike Stone, Chuck Norris, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, these type of people were training at his house, which was completely different. So the people in the Chinatown school were never allowed at his house because those are the people that he took serious. So there's a lot of historical things where people have rewritten history and debunked this. So I spent years talking to people that actually knew the man. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense now because this is how he thought. His ability to think was his greatest asset. And also being in top physical shape. Because if you're not in top physical shape, nothing's going to work. It's that simple.
So you don't agree neither with Jeet Kune Do concepts nor Jeet Kune Do original. Am I right?
Okay, so let me break that down. Okay, so Dan Inosanto said that if you don't have Bruce Lee athleticism and speed, that it's not going to work. So what he decided to do was have like a martial art college. So you could come into his school and he would bring in all of these experts from all these different disciplines, and you could pretty much kind of create what worked for you. Now, as far as original, so basically Jerry Poteet. Jerry Poteet was a student of Bruce Lee for maybe 6 months, and I'm being nice. So Jerry would run to Kempo people, and he'd be like, look, this is what Bruce Lee taught me. This is what Bruce Lee taught me. And Bruce Lee was furious and goes, I'll never teach this guy ever again. So Jerry came back crying, and he goes, I'm still not teaching you. I don't mix tulips with roses. Get lost. So then he goes to Dan. And he goes, Dan, please, I want to do some training. So Bruce Lee said, look, do whatever you want, but I'm not training the guy at all, ever. So Jerry became a Dan Inosanto student. And then, Linda didn't like Dan. So then Jerry branches off and says, well, I'm going to say I'm the original guy. So he created this brand that he was teaching the real stuff, and Dan was teaching the fake stuff. So with Linda backing him, all of a sudden he started getting better students. He got Kobe Bryant. He charged Kobe Bryant $75,000 to learn from him. And like this guy was a straight up drunk. He couldn't even do 20 push-ups. But he politically played his cards right. So he was a house sitter for Linda, is what it was. So he would watch her house whenever she traveled. And then while she was out of town, he would go through all of Bruce Lee's notes, taking photographs of them, going through all of Bruce Lee's stuff, trying to figure out this formula. So, he's just a slime ball.
Mm-hmm.
But he did what he did.
Because, it's very contradictory to me because I'm, of course, myself a big Bruce Lee fan since I was very young. And when I hear Bruce Lee himself in the interviews, he says very directly that he doesn't want any of his students teaching because they will say this is Jeet Kune Do or this is Jeet Kune Do. So what Bruce Lee himself says is like more supporting of the idea of Jeet Kune Do concepts, right?
I'm going to tell you why I believe he did that. So when he was up in Seattle, his first student was Jesse Glover, James DeMille, and these Seattle type people. So within a short amount of time, they opened up rival schools. And then they said Bruce Lee was teaching watered down garbage. And he's like, I can't believe these people. So Jesse Glover created this entire folklore, how they were close, and I'm his first black student and all this other. It's all fucking bullshit. Bruce Lee hated this dude. So he asked Bruce Lee if he could borrow his car, and he disappeared for days. Bruce Lee found him living in it. Like, Jesse Glover is just the biggest fucking fraud fucking ever. So he would tell people that Chi Sao was sparring and that he was so deadly that he really didn't want to fight. So, like, Joe Louis wanted to do a seminar with him because Joe Louis was going to beat his ass. But Jesse's like, oh, I'm not doing a seminar with him because he's racist. So this guy avoided all the best martial artists of his generation, and he stayed in Seattle and kept his little folklore going, that I know the real elements of Bruce Lee's style. So when Bruce Lee came over to Seattle, he basically knew 30 moves. And when people asked him that really knew him, they're like, hey, you only know 30 moves in Wing Chun. How are you teaching it? And he's like, well, I know 20 moves too many. Because it was all about the daily decrease. Dan Inosanto was all about the daily increase, because if you give more content, then you can keep your students coming back. But if you tell people there's only 10 techniques, no one's going to be here. So anyways, back to Seattle. Bruce Lee moves to Oakland. Most people know the story of what happened and this and that, but you got to realize something. He never spoke to James DeMille and Jesse Glover ever again for the rest of his life after he left Seattle. He didn't like these people. And I've gotten a chance to go through Bruce Lee's diary, his personal items. I even got a chance to recently wear his jacket from the Green Hornet, which was bought from an auction that cost thousands of dollars. Like, I've got a chance to read his Chinese notes, his English notes, his diary, and everything else. So, you know, people like Linda and certain historians, they don't really want to get involved in politics and say, you know, Jesse Glover is a fraud because everybody, oh yeah, you just don't like black people. No, I don't like fucking Jesse Glover, and he happens to be black. You see what I'm saying? People don't want to get in, but see, I don't care. I think the truth is the most profound thing. So, like, you know, Bruce Lee said what happened to him in Seattle would never ever happen again. So he moves to Oakland. He's only in Oakland 7 months. They act like he was in Oakland for a very long time. He was there 7 months, and then he's like, I got to get the hell out of here because, you know, Oakland is a ghetto. It's always been, it's a shithole. So nonetheless, he gets to Los Angeles, and then, you know, he just keeps evolving. So there was a book that came out in the 1800s on Savate, and that book was the biggest influence on Bruce Lee, hands down. If you go through this book, I would say 65% is Jeet Kune Do. Move for move. 100%. So I would say, you know, 20% Wing Chun, you know, boxing, and then the Savate book for sure. 100%. I put all of these pictures and photographs. I have a page on Facebook called Kung Fu Theater.
Yes,
so
I follow you.
Yeah. So on there, if you fish through there, it will show all the documentation where Bruce Lee actually created a lot of his stuff or what he was inspired by. Because a lot of people try to rewrite history. Oh yeah, the 1-inch punch, he developed it. The 1-inch punch is 400 years old. Every Kung Fu style has a 1-inch punch. So whether you're, I mean, Jeet Kune Do really is a concept, but it really isn't a style because it keeps evolving. But the 10,000 hour rule still applies. You just have to put the work in.
But there is a set of moves. There is a set of moves that you consider to be Jeet Kune Do.
Well, I would definitely have to say there's an element of boxing, and there's the element of Savate, the lower side kicks to the legs, for sure. So everybody depends too much on the finger jab. So if you've seen my videos, I'm jabbing trees, wood, everything. I
Mm.
spent years conditioning my hands, and I put the 10,000 hours in. So if I hit you with a finger jab, you're going to be blind the rest of your life. I ain't playing with you. But a lot of people that practice this, if they finger jab somebody, they're probably going to break their fingers. They've made Jeet Kune Do into a style where they're standing in this weird stance. They think they can sidekick everybody in the leg, and everybody's going to fall for a finger jab. So right then and there, they're going to be at a very, very disadvantage. It's like, okay, another guy, Larry Hartsell. Larry Hartsell did a little bit of training with Bruce Lee. He was more of a Dan student. He came out with this series called JKD Grappling. So he came to Las Vegas, and there's a lot of jiu-jitsu here. We had Sergio Pena, we had John Lewis, we had everybody because of UFC. Everybody was coming through here. So he opens up a grappling gym, and everybody taps him out, even white belts. Like, he literally did not know how to grapple. So, but instead of trying to learn and evolve, he just stayed in his own little circle, and, it is what it is. So here's the bottom line, what I tell people. The ability to think is the most important aspect of all of this, and the work ethic. So one of Bruce Lee's students and a friend of his, Peter Chen, just recently came out with a book called The Last Disciple. So I spent many years talking to him, and I would ask him questions. How did Bruce Lee think? How would he think on this? How would he think on that? And from there, it was the simplicity of everything. If something didn't work, he was done with it. He was gone. There was no like, why does this not work? He would just walk on. He wouldn't waste a second on it, almost like he internally knew he didn't have that much time, that he had to get all of this stuff done within a certain amount of time.
So Sifu, coming back to you, is it correct to say that you developed your own perspective of Jeet Kune Do based on your research?
Well, okay, so if I teach you how to make something to eat and you have different taste buds to me, then you're going to put maybe your Argentinian flavor on it. You don't need to be an exact version of me, because I have a different body aesthetics than you. I'm 6'3". I'm extremely athletic. So for me to show you something and you try to replicate it exactly like me, it may not work for you. So you're going to have to make maybe a little bit of a modification for yourself, because everything is your personal journey. So yeah, I did take lessons from Wing Chun masters and so-called JKD people. And I was like, wow, they have no speed, they're totally out of shape, and they don't know how to make me a world-class athlete. I need to get the hell away from these people. So you have to put your desire first, and then there's certain principles that you have to follow. So it really isn't about the obsession with the technique. It's more so, none of it's going to work unless you're in top physical shape. So if you're in top physical shape, you're definitely more than halfway there.
Okay, so Sifu Valente, you fought in K1, if I'm not mistaken, which is
that is correct. At 40.
Elite kickboxing. How was the process to? I don't know, because you didn't tell me if you started. Yes, you told me that you competed in point karate. So you started.
The point karate was in the 70s. Above the waist kickboxing in the 80s, and then I did, what they called Oriental rules kickboxing. So there was no elbows allowed, but you were allowed to kick to the leg. So I did that in the 90s.
So how was the process from traditional martial arts to K1? Could you tell us?
It goes back to what Bruce Lee said. A kick is a kick, a punch is a punch. You know, there's going to be certain modifications to it. So if someone's leg kicking you, okay, so here's the best example. So right now you have bare knuckle boxing going on. You have UFC. You have regular boxing, and you have people that fight in the street and backyard. So to the naked eye, they all look the same, but actually they're a little bit different. So a guy who fights bare knuckle boxing, he's not going to be very successful doing regular boxing because it's a different kind of rhythm, and punching with a glove that's 10 ounces is a little bit different than punching bare knuckle. So just like an MMA guy, you can take the best boxer in the world and put him barefoot, and now all of a sudden his whole boxing system is screwed because his balance is completely different now because he's barefoot. So all of these little modifications, you have to make the adjustments. There's no one way that's going to make all of these the same. So training in shoes, training in bare feet, way different. Training with an MMA glove, punching with a boxing glove, and punching bare knuckle, they're all, to the naked eye, look the same, but they're different. So with the bare knuckle, you really don't have to be that great of a puncher, but because you're punching with your bare knuckles, you're going to do damage. An MMA guy in a 4-ounce glove, anybody can get knocked out. But you put a 12-ounce glove on an MMA guy, he's probably not going to be the best boxer. So there's no one style that's going to fit all of that. Everything is going to need some level of modification. So think of it like an airplane. An airplane rarely takes off on time. It doesn't fly straight. But see, pilots don't think about that. What pilots think about is how to land. So the same thing with the fighting. You're going to take off. You're probably not going to fly that straight, but you better focus on how to land.
Okay, Sifu, and what does it take to compete in that elite level of kickboxing as it is K1? Because not anybody competes at that level.
You are 100% correct. You have to have a lot of experience for sure. And to fight the way I fought, doing the spinning kicks and stuff like that, that is so difficult. Like if I look back on it, I'm like, geez, I would never try to do that shit because it's too hard. Because
right.
it's really not practical. It's entertainment. So, over 20 million people watched the fight and they loved it and they wanted more, but Japan, whatever. So it's fighting is the best. Fighting is very simplistic and very ugly.
Yes.
It's like in modern, okay, so in JKD, you see all these guys doing their videos and they're teaching you and they're telling you to kick the front leg. In reality, you should be kicking the rear leg. You see, when Bruce Lee put this together back in the 1960s, people weren't really that trained in martial arts. You can walk down the street now and the average person knows 2 disciplines. Like people now are so much more sophisticated. So in my experiences in recent years, when I battle people, if I side kick their rear leg, they're done. Finished. The whole leg just comes apart. You can leg check a side kick with the front leg, but when they throw a kick and you side kick the reverse leg, they're done. It's a wrap. I'm telling you.
I never saw a side kick to the rear leg.
I have a couple of videos on how to set it up, and it's very, very, very effective. I'm telling you.
You had to fight a lot to become a K1 fighter.
To get to K1? Oh, absolutely. So to get to K1, they had a Russian guy that he had over 100 wins, a bunch of titles. And I said, I'll come out of a strip club and beat the guy. And they're like, yeah, whatever. So in 2001 at the Mirage Hotel, with no training, I went in there and I fought the guy and I beat him. So they're like, wow, okay. we'll use you for something. But they're like, hey, wait a minute now. This is a couple years after that. They're like, you know, you're 40 years old. We don't want to promote you. You know, let's just, I'm like, listen, I don't even care. I just want to check and I want to do something that's never been done before. I want to do some crazy shit. I want to do some flying kicks. I want to come in costume, whatever. They go, look, it's Japan. Do whatever you want. Just don't side kick to his leg. And I said, no problem. I'm not trying to cripple the guy, whatever. But now, if you're talking about a real fight, first thing I'm doing, as soon as he throws that rear leg kick, I'm crippling him. He's out of there.
Have you ever had to defend yourself on the streets?
Absolutely. Many times. I've hit people with nunchucks. I've been in some knife battles, staff, all kinds of stuff. Because, you know, the world was a different place back then. So, you know, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. So Detroit, Michigan is predominantly, you know, thousands of out of work people. It's a very hostile environment. So, you know, back in those in that time, people fought for entertainment. That's what guys do. You see what I'm saying? This is a new generation where guys wear dresses and makeup and call the cops on you. But back in those days, it was way different. You know? I mean, I openly now, if someone wants to try their knife technique against my nunchuck skills, my door is wide open. And I will make sure I get it filmed and I will make a serious example out of them. I'm not kidding.
And how was it that you got involved in nunchucks fighting? What leads a person to have to use a nunchuck in a fight? Was it a challenge? Were you walking down the streets?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. And back in the 70s, you know, we would pretty much carry anything. We didn't care. You know, the world was a different place. I mean, nowadays, you know, people will kill you for nothing. The UK had 20,000 stabbings and, you know, and so on. The world's a different place. But trust me, if anybody wants to challenge my chucks with a knife, please. I want to get this on footage because I'm telling you, when nunchucks hit someone in the skull, it is total devastation. They're not doing nothing. I'm telling you.
And doesn't the nunchuck bounce back to you when you hit something?
No. See, here's the thing. Okay, so here's the difference. A lot of people are learning nunchucks have actually become like a performing art where you kind of dance with them. So that's not real nunchucks. Real nunchucks basically have maybe 5 moves, and the moves are lethal. There's not going to be no bouncing. It's going to go right through your head. So people that kind of do this dance stuff and all of this extra twirling, and I do some of that stuff too, and I can dance, but I'm not going to use that in combat. What I use in combat, they're solid steel, and there ain't no bouncing.
Okay. And what do you give classes? Do you teach Sifu Valente?
What I'm doing now is there's a private gym here in town owned by Manny Pacquiao, and I actually mentor certain trainers. People come to me in private and they ask to learn different things. So I taught a bunch of stuntmen for a movie. I taught someone else how to use blade. I know how to do firearms. So everybody comes to me for something different. So I've been involved in boxing for a really, really long time. So I was trained by Roger Mayweather and Jeff Mayweather for years. I have extensive boxing knowledge. So a lot of people come to me in private to help with their boxing.
So what different styles do you train and teach? Jeet Kune, boxing, something else?
No, I never train anybody in Jeet Kune Do ever, because here's the bottom line. If you can't box, nothing is going to be that effective. You have to learn boxing first. So if you learn boxing and then you learn some Wing Chun, it makes sense. But if you just go learn some Wing Chun and then you try to box, it's going to be a disaster. You have to learn to box first, because no matter what discipline someone is, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to throw a punch at you. And most likely, they're going to throw a straight right hand. So if you understand boxing, then you can dismantle anything. So like if I have a sparring match against a boxer, it's so easy for me because a boxer puts all his weight on his front leg. So I basically sidekick any of his legs, he crumbles to the ground, and it's over. And I've done this for years. See, if you understand someone, then it's easy to defeat them. You've got to learn boxing first. And then you learn some Wing Chun. Then, you can add in your finger jab if you want to. And also, too, I think it's important to learn fencing because fencing is so fast on how to close the distance. There's no other sport that moves like a fencer. So like there's a fencer in the UK. This guy is 6'7", and he's probably the best fencer I've ever seen ever. I've never seen nobody close the distance like this guy. And his arms are like 88-inch reach. So a guy who can blitz you and has that kind of reach and he has a sword, like you're going to have some serious problems. So that explosiveness is very, very important. So Bruce Lee was inspired by his brother Peter, who was a fencer. So that's where it started from. If you look at his footwork, it's very inspired by fencing. It's all about closing that distance, that blitz.
I agree with you. I agree. I always tell my students that boxing is the most practical thing to learn. It's very suitable when you are getting older and you can't move or do so many different moves or kicks.
But think about it. How many punches are there in boxing? 6 punches, maybe? So you take 6 punches and you just drill them over and over and over again for thousands of hours, and then it becomes a part of your memory. So there it is.
Have you trained?
Then you add a little bit of Wing Chun. Add a little bit of Wing Chun for the blocking.
Have you trained grappling?
Yes, absolutely. 20 years.
Wow. Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling? What did you do?
All of it. I've actually got a chance. Habib Magomedov, I've actually got a chance to be a guest in a lot of his training camps. And I picked up some great pointers from them. Olympic wrestlers, Vegas, every fighter in the world at some point comes through this town. So you have an opportunity to constantly learn things.
And have you ever considered, or did you ever consider throughout your career to compete in MMA?